Hello, this is the lecture preparation for August 30th, 2015, the 22nd Sunday in Ordinary Time. I'm looking at the LTP Lector workbook beginning on page 250. So this weekend's reading is, we have set them in a 3-week series for our parish, and it's built around the Ministries Conference, which is entitled, Who Do You Say I Am? Your Response Matters, which is taken largely from the readings of September the 13th in a couple of weeks. But we're looking at them in the same light of it. While I'm on that subject, I'm hoping that to see all of you at the Ministries Conference. And I just want to make it clear that those of you who are in ministry, lectors and other people, this is something you are expected at. This is not just something that if you're not doing anything else, you might as well do it. As a minister in our parish, you're expected to be here for this. There are other people who are interested, and they can come too. But again, I want to use the word expected, and I don't want to be hard-fisted about it. But it's very important that all of you make every effort that you can to be there. If you haven't already signed up, please do so immediately. Okay, so I'm going to jump around just a little bit in the preparation here today. First of all, I'm on page 251, and in the upper left corner, there's a box, and it says, Keep in Mind. And this is to establish a pattern for your opening. And this is how I would like all of you to do this. There's some variation from what I hear out there, so please pay attention to this and see if you can make this your own. So the opening, the first thing is to establish eye contact and to announce from memory a reading from. That's not asking a lot. So in this case, you would look at the people who are hearing you and say, a reading from the book of Deuteronomy, without looking down. You can memorize that. And then pause, 3 full beats. And this creates anticipation for them to hear you. Okay, so make sure you do that, eye contact, memorize your announcement, and then wait 3 beats. And also, I do want, where they say the correct pronunciation is a reading and not a reading. I hear a couple of people say a reading. That's not how people talk. People say a reading. And we want it to sound like people talk. So please, all of you, a reading. And it doesn't say here too, but I don't want you to pause between a reading and then go on. Don't say a reading from the book of Deuteronomy. Make that all one phrase, please. A reading from the book of Deuteronomy. All one phrase. I think I said that enough. Okay, let's go over to the page 250 at the bottom. There's an introduction to all 3 readings there. It says, Today, all 3 readings revolve around proper hearing and responding to God's laws and commands. In ancient Israel, the law was understood to provide guidelines for how to live well in all relationships, and as such was considered a gift from God. But our ancestors in faith, like us, sometimes forgot that divine teaching in the form of commands is always rooted in and oriented toward right relationship with God, others, and the physical world. Without that purpose, laws can restrict instead of freeing us for right living. That's the point of the laws. The first is from the book of Deuteronomy. Oh, one more thing. I want to go back at the top of 250, and then there's another box there. It says, Keep in mind, name of characters, often the first word of a reading. Lift out the name to ensure the listeners don't miss who the subject is. In this case, it's Moses. And you'll see at the liner notes to the left, it says, Lift out the name of Moses. So when you do that, so what does lift out mean? That's gonna mean that you stress the word a little bit. You may raise your voice a little bit, maybe a little bit louder. And a good idea is then to punctuate, to put a little bit of break after that. So Moses said to the people, instead of Moses said to the people, we want to make sure that name gets out there. Okay, so then God is speaking, is suggesting that you speak in a lofty lofty tone. And then further down, he says, "For what great nation is there?" You want to speak that from the vantage point of nations that envy the privilege of Israel. Okay, the comments then, commentary below the reading, at the bottom, starting at the bottom of 250, kind of reiterates what I said as the very beginning. And it says, "As usual in the Bible, a call to hear divine teaching is accompanied by a summon to act upon the word." In Hebrew, one word, Shema, commands the people to both hear and obey. A response of true obedience will bear in mind the purpose of the law, not merely external observance for its own sake. A reading from the book of Deuteronomy. Moses said to the people, "Now, Israel, hear the statutes and decrees which I am teaching you to observe, that you may live, and may enter in and take possession of the land which the Lord, the God of your fathers, is giving you. In your observance of the commandments of the Lord your God, which I enjoin upon you, you shall not add to what I command you, nor subtract from it. Observe them carefully, for thus you will give evidence of your wisdom and intelligence to the nations, who will hear of all these statutes and say, 'This nation is truly a wise and intelligent people.' For what great nation is there that has God so close to it as the Lord our God is to us whenever we call upon him? Or what great nation has statutes and decrees that are just as this whole law which I am setting before you today?" The word of the Lord. Okay, so we'll go in order then. Actually, I want to look shortly at the responsorial psalm. And again, the responsorial psalm is always in a response to the Old Testament reading. And it just as I had suggested, it does that here. Whoever walks blamelessly and does justice, who thinks the truth in his heart and slanders not with his tongue, who harms not his fellow man, nor takes up reproach against his neighbor, by whom the reprobate is despised, while he honors those who fear the Lord, etc. So it's speaking about living justly. So today we begin in the second reading, looking at a new book. This is the short but very important book, the letter of St. James. And let's see, a couple of notes here. The important line of this reading is where it says, "Be doers of the word and not hearers only." In fact, just the first part of that, "Be doers of the word," is the most important, probably, of all the three readings. If you were to ask me, I think he just, the author of James here, just really put it all together in those phrases there. Again, this is similar to what we said, that rooted in Jewish thought, the author urges those who truly hear the word to put it into practice, and that's the intent of all these readings today. A reading from the letter of St. James. Dearest brothers and sisters, all good giving and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no alteration or shadow caused by change. He willed to give us birth by the word of truth, that he may be a kind of first fruits of his creatures. Humbly welcome the word that has been planted in you and is able to save your souls. Be doers of the word, and not hearers only, deluding yourselves. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God and the Father is this: to care for orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained by the world. The word of the Lord. Okay, and then finally, I'm not going to move to the gospel first. Before we do the gospel, I want you to look at the the note in the middle of the left of page 252 in the square, word value. You need to understand the words that you speak. For example, in the first reading, I looked up some of the words. Statutes. I mean, I kind of know what that meant, but a statute is a law made by God. Decrees can have the same meaning, but it tends to suggest more laws that are made by humans in response to the law of God. There's another word, enjoin. It's not a word that I use very often, and it means really a direct order. Enjoin to me sounds kind of soft, but it's actually quite a strong word. It really means a direct order. So look at the words. Whenever you see a word that maybe you don't use a lot, especially if you see one you don't understand, you really should understand. Look it up. I just go online. I put the word in there and put definition, and there'll be several options for me to check out. And that'll give me an understanding of the word. Sometimes you'll see a word which you think you understand, but then when you look at it and go, well, I don't know if I really do. In the case of this, statutes and decrees, I wanted a little bit more direct definition on that, so I looked that up. I enjoin you to do the same. Okay, and then before I do the gospel reading, looking over to page 253 on the right, it says, keep in mind, in this reading there is a list. And it says you need to avoid extremes of too much stress or too little stress when you have a list, like the one that occurs at the end of this reading. It's just... You're going to lose people either way. If you say it too slow, it puts too much emphasis on that, and then they'll probably forget some of the ones at the beginning. If you go too fast, they don't even hear it. So you want to be careful of that. Also, on this reading, the deacons will be reading this, and there is an aside. In other words, it would be in parentheses, and on page 252, that one it's set off by the hyphen there. There's a line there, and that could even be a parentheses if you wanted to. It's something that not. He begins telling the story, and then he throws in this little information. That's the aside, and then he continues on with the story. It's important. The author of this book suggests when the Pharisees questioned Jesus, they must have been harsh because Jesus' response was very strong. He came right back at him with a vengeance, really, and so that would want to be reflected in the way you do say the words of the Pharisees and the scribes. So, gospel reading. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. When the Pharisees with some scribes had come from Jerusalem gathered around Jesus, they observed that some of the disciples ate their meals with unclean, that is, unwashed hands. For the Pharisees, in fact all Jews, do not eat without carefully washing their hands, keeping the tradition of the elders. And on coming from the marketplace, they do not eat without purifying themselves. And there are many other things that they have traditionally observed, the purification of cups and jugs and kettles and beds. So the Pharisees and the scribes questioned him, "Why do your disciples not follow the tradition of the elders, but instead eat a meal with unclean hands?" He responded, "Well did Isaiah prophesy about you hypocrites, as it is written, This people honors me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines human precepts. You disregard God's commands, but cling to human tradition." He summoned the crowd again and said to them, "Hear me, all of you, and understand. Nothing that comes from outside can defile that person, but the things that come from within are what defile. From within people, from their hearts, come evil thoughts, unchastity, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, licentiousness, envy, blasphemy, arrogance, folly. All these evils come from within, and they defile the gospel of the Lord. And again, thank you for your attention to your ministry, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of you in the ministry conference on the 12th of September. God bless.